So you've come up with this business idea and you and your co-founders are excited about this new launch, right? Ideas are flying everywhere, everybody's excited, right? And it's time for the big launch. And then comes the question, who is going to take what? How many shares am I going to give my co-founder, or is it the person who came up with the idea that is going to have a larger amount of the equity in this company? And questions related to equity keep flying left, right, and center. And if you are in that kind of situation now and you came across this video, don't worry, because in this video I'm going to be sharing practical tips for splitting equity amongst you and your co-founders in a fair way, strategically, and without the risk of having your startup crashing even before it is launched. Now, why is this topic very important? This is important because at the end of the day, equity structure of every company is very important. The equity structure, or the way the equity of a company is structured, determines who owns that company actually. Also, it also determines who is the decision maker, or who are the decision makers of the company. And more importantly, it also helps in determining how investors are going to be looking at your startup in the future, especially if you're looking to raise funds from investors, right? So let's dive right into this subject. Now, when it comes to splitting equity amongst your co-founders, there are many factors that you want to put into place. And when I'm talking about factors, it's subjective, right? But there are factors that are important to you guys as founders. It's important that you um, bring out these topics and begin to address them even before it gets into something else, right? So I'm going to be sharing certain very common factors that I believe that co-founders should be addressing in determining who gets what when it comes to the equity split of that startup. Now, like I said earlier, these factors are not set in stone, but with this point I'm going to raise, it will give you an idea about what you should be talking about and the factors to consider when it comes to determining equity split amongst co-founders in your company. Now, the first point is idea contribution, right? So, who brought this idea in the first place? Who is pioneering this idea? Is it just one person who decided to bring in others into the scene, or was it all of us that came up with this idea? The idea behind this factor is that, of course, ideally, the person who came up with this idea that has become so viable that everybody's excited about and has potential, right, should be rewarded to an extent, right? Yeah. And then the next point, capital contribution. So who is contributing? Who is contributing what? Is it just one person bringing in the money and others are bringing in sweat equity? By sweat equity, I mean they are not bringing in money, but they're going to be working. They're going to be bringing in other things like their expertise or intangible things that could help the business or the startup to go forward. So that's something to also consider now. Or is everybody bringing in money? And if they are, how much and how much is are each founders or are each co-founders bringing to the table? That is also an important point to consider. Another thing is time commitment, right? So is everybody going to be working full-time in this startup, or are there going to be part-time co-founders? Of course, the person who is going to be spending much of their time and energy in getting the startup running and functional and keeping the business alive should ideally be rewarded more than the others, right? And then expertise or skill contributions. So is this business founded primary, or the nature of product or service, is it founded primarily on an expertise that one of the co-founders have, right? So let's say maybe for instance in a tech startup, or say a an ICT consulting startup, um who is the ICT expert here? Is any of us or any of the co-founders, are they ICT experts? And is this person going to be bringing their expertise to the table to bear? Of course, ideally, he or she is going to be bringing their expertise. So what's the reward there? Are we going to consider this, and what are we going to give because of this consideration, right? And then another thing is the future value and role. So the equity that you're paying is not a payment for past work done. It is also a payment for the future, right? So that being said, when you're looking to split equity, also bear in mind that you are not just rewarding the action that has been done or the one that is about to be done, but you are also going to be rewarded actions that will also take place in the future as well. So that being said, you need to understand what is the future role, not just only the common role of each of your co-founders. Do you see yourself staying together, or do you see them staying in the next 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, or they're just coming to start, right? So that's something to also take into consideration. And we could go on about factors, but the tip here is, as co-founders, iron out the points that are important to you, right? Iron them out and discuss them. And based on these factors, you be able to know what amount or percentage that you are awarding to each co-founders, right? Now, in practice, there are various equity models or equity split models that people or startup founders adopt when it comes to determining who takes what in a startup, right? So there is the common one, which is the 50-50, the equal split. So everybody just get what is equal. It doesn't matter who is doing what. It doesn't matter who brought the idea. Everybody just takes an equal stake, right? There is also the one that rewards based on what you're bringing to the table, right? So if what you're bringing to the table is significant, let's say there are three co-founders. One is a technical founder, one is in charge of marketing, and the other one is in charge of maybe operations, right? So the technical founder, of course, as the founder, takes 70%. The other one, the head of operations, takes 20%, and the other one takes 10%. The one of marketing takes 10%, right? So there is that model as well. And then there is this other model in which the co-founders are rewarded equity splits based on milestones achieved. So, like I said earlier, you are rewarding for the future, right? And I, as a lawyer and startup founder or a business lawyer, I prefer this model. And if you do your research, you'll find out that most people recommend this kind of model. Why? Because from experience, research has shown that there is every tendency amongst co-founders to leave a startup even before or after the first year of that startup. It's very, very possible for your co-founder to become a dead weight. You don't see the input, you don't see the impact, especially when the rubber hits the road. So in such situations, when the person leaves, is the person going to be leaving with everything, all the shares you gave? So you gave 50%, the person automatically has that 50%, even for just staying for 1 year and not doing anything or doing significant work. The person has already earned 50%. That's a bit unfair. In fact, that is unfair, right? So, but this model rewards work that is done. And I'm going to be explaining how this works as we go down the line, right? So, here is what I want to emphasize. Based on this model that I suggested, and depending on whatever kind of model you want to go for, whether it's 50-50, whether it's based on the role that you've played, or it's based on, you want to give equity based on milestones that has been achieved, ensure that you have legal documentation. Is very important. From the onset, ensure that there is an agreement amongst the founders that determines or says expressly this and this and this is the amount that each person is getting. How are they getting it? When are they getting it? These things should be clearly spelled out in their agreement, because time will fly. A lot of things will happen along the line. And if these things are not written down, it could bring unnecessary tension amongst co-founders, right? So take this into consideration. Now, going back to the model that I recommended, that is that of sharing equity based on milestones achieved. I'm going to give a very practical example so that you can understand how this model works. So let's say there are three co-founders, A, B, and C, right? Okay, let me just use two so that it's easier. There is co-founder A and B, and they're about to launch a tech startup, right? And the question of equity split comes in, like how many shares, or how many what percentage of ownership right am I giving to are we giving to each other in this company, right? So they have considered all the factors I raised earlier. That is, who brought the idea, how the time commitment, expertise, and the right, like, and okay, they've weighed this. Now they want to determine the issue of the model. How are they going to split this? So if you're using the milestone model, here is how it works. So instead of giving the person, look, you people have decided to split based on your calculation. A is getting 55%, B is getting 45%. Now we want to go through the milestone model. How that will work is, for A, who is getting 55%, right? He or she is not going to get 55% immediately. So it will be split, you said, based on milestones. So you can say 4 years, right? For 4 years. At the end of every year, you get a percentage of it. So you can divide 4 years into, we said 4 years, you can divide 4 years into, sorry, you can divide 55%, right, into 4 years, and that gives you 13.75%. So at the end of the first year, the founder A gets 13.75% equity, right? Because he has stayed for 1 year and has obviously contributed, demonstrated expertise, has basically achieved a particular milestone, right? And this will come up in the second year too. At the end of the second year, he gets an additional 13.75. It keeps going on down to the fourth year. It's at the end of the fourth year that he will now get his entire 55%. Now for B, and founder B, the same thing will happen too. In founder B's case, you divide it in 4 years, right? So if it is 45%, you divide it into 4 years. That gives you 11.25%, right? So 11.25%, the first year, if he achieves milestone, he gets 11.25. Now, what happens if founder B decides to leave? Right? If founder B decides to leave after the first year and doesn't stay to the second year, what happens is that founder B only walks away with 11.25% of ownership rights in that company and nothing more. That means the company doesn't, even though the company is losing this founder, the company does not get to lose the entire share or ownership rights to this founder for working for just 1 year. You see the beauty of this model, right? So that is it. And we could go on and on. You can apply to a number of founders, even whether they are two, they are three, they are four. You can use this model and this strategy. So decide on the factors, determining factors, and then allot based on whichever model. It could be the 50-50 model, it could be based on roles, or it could be based on milestones achieved. Now, at the end of the day, from based on the example I've given, in summary, we can say that there is no one size fits all model when it comes to determining who gets what when it amongst co-founders. What is important is that the method you've decided to adopt to split equity among your co-founders must be fair, it must be transparent, and it must be documented. Please, it must be documented. It doesn't make sense having transparency, fairness, and it's not documented for future purposes, right? So please ensure that you document whatever you decide in terms of the relationship as far as equity structure of that company is concerned. And so that is it for how to split equity amongst co-founders in a startup. I hope you got value from this video. If you did, feel free to like, share, and leave a comment on this video. If you also have a question, you can also leave it on the video and we will respond to you once we see that. And if you need to book a consultation to speak with myself or any member of our legal team about splitting equity for your startup, feel free to contact us through any of the contact information displayed on the screen, and we will do well to attend to you. And until I come your way again, do have a wonderful day.